Hello everybody, this is B and we are back with the Twisted Ones, Five Nights at Freddy's. I did that backwards, but we're on chapter 10, so away we go. For the first few minutes, Charlie kept her eyes shut, feigning sleep. But after a little while, they began to flutter of their own accord. She squeezed her eyes shut, trying to force them to stay closed, but it became unbearable. She opened them into the darkness, and at once she felt relief. The house had grown cool with night. The open windows let in fresh, clean air. She breathed deeply, trying with each exhalation to make herself calm. She wasn't anxious so much as impatient. Hurry up, she thought. I know you're out there. But there was only silence and stillness. She took the disc out of her pocket and she looked at it. It was too dark to see any details. Not that there was anything on it. She had it already memorized. A little light shone in from the moon outside, but the shadows in the corner were deep. Like there was something hidden there, eating up the light. She rubbed the side of the disc with her thumb, feeling the bumps of the letters. As she didn't know they were there, they'd scarcely be noticeable. Afton Robotics, LLC. She'd seen pictures of William Afton, the man who Dave had been, pictures of him with her father, smiling and laughing, but she only remembered him as the man in the rabbit suit. My father must have trusted him. He must not have suspected. He would never have built a second restaurant with the man who murdered one of his children. But those creatures, he had to have known they were buried beneath our house. Charlie clenched her teeth, stifling a sudden delirious urge to smile. Of course there was a secret robot graveyard under my bedroom, she murmured. Of course that's where it would be. She covered her face in her hands. All the threads were tangling in her mind. She pictured it unwillingly. The creature in the doorway. At first he was a shadow blocking the light. Then he was a man in a rabbit suit. Even then it didn't occur to Charlie to be afraid. She knew this rabbit. Sammy hadn't even noticed him yet. He continued to play with his toy truck, running it back and forth hypnotically across the floor. Charlie stared up at the thing in the doorway, and a coldness began to gather in the pit of her stomach. This was not the rabbit she knew. Its eyes shifted back and forth subtly between the twins, taking its time, making its choice. When the eyes settled on Charlie, the cold feeling spread all through her. Then he looked away again at Sammy, who still hadn't turned around. Then a sudden movement, and the costumes on their hangers all leaped together, covering her so she couldn't see. She heard the toy truck hit the ground and spin in place for a moment. Then everything was still. She was alone. A vital part of her cut away. Charlie sat up, shaking herself to try and set the memories loose. She'd grown accustomed to sharing a room with Jessica. It was a long time since she had been completely alone with her thoughts in the dark. I forgot how hard it is to be quiet, she whispered, her voice as soft as breath. She glared down at the strange disc in her hands, as if she was bringing these visions on her. As if it was bringing the visions on her. She tossed it across the room and into a dark corner, out of sight. Then she heard it. Something was inside the house. Whatever it was being cautious. She heard creaks from somewhere distant, but they were slow and muted. Silence followed. Whatever moved was hoping the sound would be forgotten. Charlie crept from the bed and approached the door carefully, pushing it farther open and leaning out, agonizing slowly, until she could see deep into the living room and the dining room beyond that. A part of her kept returning to the thought that she was in someone else's house, that she was the intruder. Hello, she called, almost hoping for an answer. Even an angry one, demanding to know what she was doing there. Maybe John would answer, happy to have found her, and come running from the darkness. Only silence returned her call, but Charlie knew that she wasn't alone anymore. Her eyes widened. her heartbeat drumming in her throat, making it hard to breathe. She took careful steps over the stone tiles, down the short hall to just outside the living room, where she stood to listen again. A clock chimed the hours in a different room. Charlie walked to the edge of the living room and stopped again. She could see most of the house from here, and she scanned the area for anything out of place. Doorways surrounded her like gaping mouths, breathing night air from the windows she'd opened. There was a long hall leading from the farthest corner of the living room to a different bedroom. It was one of the few places she didn't have a clear line of sight into. She edged around the leather sofa in front of her and crossed the circular rug that filled the room. As she walked, she could see more of the hallway slowly revealing itself. It stretched out farther and farther. Charlie stopped mid-step. She could see into the far bedroom now. It was full of windows and blue moonlight, and there was something obstructing her view, something she hadn't noticed while she was moving. Now its silhouette was unmistakable. Charlie carefully looked around again, her eyes adjusting to her surroundings. To her right, another large door led to a single step and into a large den. Bookcases stretched up to the ceiling, and putrid air emanated, I cannot talk, from inside. Beyond the bookcase was another shadow that didn't belong. Charlie bumped into a lamp and startled. She hadn't even realized she was moving backwards. The front door was open wide. Charlie nearly bolted towards it to escape, but she stopped herself. She took a deep breath and stepped softly back towards the bedroom, checking over her shoulder as she went. She went back to the bed, sliding her bare feet on the wood floor so her steps would make no sound, and eased herself slowly onto the mattress, cautious to keep their springs from creaking. Charlie lay back, closed her eyes, and waited. Her eyes twitched, every instinct she had shouting the same thing. Open your eyes. Run. Charlie breathed steadily in and out, trying to make her body go limp, trying to look asleep. Something is moving. She counted the steps. 1, 2, 1, 2. No, they were slightly asynchronous. There were more than one of them. 2, maybe all 3, were inside the house. One set of footsteps passed her door, and she let her eyes flutter open for an instant, just in time to see an indistinct shadow cross before the crack in the door. Another set of footsteps sounded like they were in the side hallway, while a third, she screwed her eyes shut tight. The steps fell outside her door. Her breath was shuddering. She almost hiccuped as she inhaled, and she bit her lip together. The door was gliding open. Her lungs tightened, pressing her for air, but she refused. She hung on to that single breath as if it were the last one she'd ever get. I'll find you. She clenched her fist, determined to remain still. The footsteps were through the door now, crossing the floor with a heavy tread. She kept still. The air above her stirred, and through her closed eyelids, the darkness grew even darker. Charlie opened her eyes and breathed in. The space above her was empty. Nothing was looking down at her. She turned her head slowly, peering into the open hall to her left. The noises had stopped. Suddenly, the blankets were yanked off of her, pulled from the foot of the bed. Charlie shot up and finally saw what had come for her. An enormous head rested its chin at her feet. It looked like something from a carnival game, its eyes rolling from side to side, clicking each time they moved. A pitch black top that was perched on its head. A black top hat was perched on its head, cocked slightly to one side, and the giant cheeks and button nose gave him away immediately. Freddy. It was no longer the sleek, featureless head she had unearthed in the abandoned lot. His head was lively and full of movement, covered in wavy brown fur and bouncy cheeks, yet there was something disjointed about it all, as though every part of his face was moving independently. Charlie fought to remain still, but her body was acting of its own accord, squirming and pulling to get away from the mouth opening up toward her. Freddy's face slid across the bed like a python. His head lost its shape as it folded outward, taking hold of her feet and beginning to swallow, moving slowly upward as she fought not to scream or fight. A giant arm reached up and clapped the side of the bed, shaking the room as it anchored itself and pulled the giant torso higher. Freddy's jaw made motions of chewing as the distorted face pulled Charlie's leg inside it. His cheeks and chin dislocating further, it no longer resembled a living thing. Panic took hold and Charlie screamed. She clenched her fist, but there was no longer a face to strike. There was only a squeezing and spiraling vortex of fur, teeth, and wire. Before she could struggle further, her arms were pinned to her side, trapped inside the thing. Only her head remained free. She gasped for a last breath, then was violently scooped up, consumed by the creature. Clay Burke stopped the car without slowing down. The brakes screeched as they fishtailed in the dirt. John was out of the car before Clay had gotten it under control, running up the hill towards the house. "Round back," Clay said, catching up to John, his voice low and tight. They made their way across the house to the back door, which was gaping open. "Check that way," Clay gestured to his right as he ran left. John stuck close to the wall, peering into doorways as he passed them. "Charlie!" he cried. "Charlie!" Clay echoed, entering the master bedroom. "Charlie!" John ran from room to room, moving faster. "Charlie!" He arrived at the front door. He swung it wide open and stepped outside, half expecting to catch someone fleeing the scene. "Clay, did you find her?" he shouted as he raced back inside. Clay walked briskly back into the living room, shaking his head. "No, but she was here. The bed was unmade, and there was dirt all over the floor. And these," he held up Charlie's sneakers. John nodded grimly, now only noticing the trail of dirt strewn through the house. He glanced again to the front door. "She's gone," he said, his voice catching in his throat. He looked at the older man. "Now what?" he asked. Clay just stared at the floor and said nothing. "Well, Charlie's in the tummy of Freddy." I hope you guys enjoy, and I will see you in the next video. This one was a pretty short chapter. I don't know if I should have read 2 chapters, but for now, I guess because we only have 4 left, I'll kind of try to spread it out. So I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye!